All right. Just get fired up here for our Saturday night live stream. TikTok live monitor. I'm not in that. I got to get over to my other account here. Just go. Because I don't have, I actually have a couple of TikTok accounts, so I've got to do this a different way. Maybe I should try the chat. Let's try that. Not overlay. That's not. How do I embed this chat? I should have had this set up. If you're on the live, I can't tell yet. I'm sorry. I'll get there in a second. Where's my embed options here? And then we'll get fired up here tonight. Okay, here we are. And I'll just monitor this on my phone as well, just so I can see what's going on. We'll give the stream a couple minutes to fire up. We're going to do some, we're going to read a couple stories tonight. I think we're going to do Saturday nights. I think Saturday nights, Saturday's the night. We're going to do our lives here. Saturday night live. We're going to do some reading. I think we'll do some, there's snow on the ground, so we'll take advantage of that to do some, read some sacred stories. And then, as I promised earlier in the week, tonight we're going to start on transcribing. Hey, Emmy, Danis. Just bear with me here. I'm just trying to get. I'm set up with a new streaming system here, and I'm just trying to make sure I don't miss out on the comments because there's a little bit of fuss, and I see that. I'm just sort of wiring all the pieces together, so just bear with me. So yeah, tonight we'll read a couple stories. I think Saturday is going to be the night. I was doing Wednesday and Saturday before. It was a little bit hard to it was a little bit hard to stay on top of. I had a little bit of had to take a little break in the spring, and then I don't know that 2 nights a week is going to be doable for me. So I think I'll just do Saturdays. Saturdays make sense for me right now. I was gonna try and get another window. I got my chat up there. I guess that'll work. I got a new setup, so I'm still figuring this out. We'll give folks a couple minutes to trickle in the door here, and then we'll get started. Just gonna jump over to my site, kiano.net, and we'll jump over to Bloomfield. We'll pick a story. I think we'll start with. I got one. I'm gonna pull a couple stories out of this book. I got this book while I was in Edmonton. I picked it up at there was a SILR gathering at the River Cree that was in the spring, I think. And so we'll grab a couple stories out of there. We'll read a couple of those. And I thought, oh, I'm feeling brave. I'm feeling brave, so what we'll do is maybe we'll pluck a story out of Bloomfield's text. The uh, the interpretation can be a little kind of sketchy, I guess, or I should say, not to say that he didn't do good work, but the interpretation is very 1920s, 1930s. So I try not to lean on it too heavily, but it can give us good hints. All right, let me see what I can find here. Are you doing the Sundance story? We could start at that one. I had sort of thought I would pick I guess they're all sacred stories, so we could pick just about any one. But the first one it is a good story. It's a long story, but we could go through it. We could dissect some of that a little bit. You can follow along if you want. If you go to Keanu.net, scroll down to Bloomfield, click on the link, and you could follow along that way. If that's if it would be helpful or interesting to read this story, we can definitely do that. Because there's a lot of interesting. If you're studying language, there's a lot of interesting not only vocabulary but grammar. I was talking with my wife. My wife's also a language learner. My wife's language is Okanagan Salish and Silshin Sigati. And so we get to talk about this stuff. But I was saying, I really enjoyed doing the 4 nights that we did of the solstice this week, because we read those stories last year, not on the solstice, I don't think, but we read them over the winter, some of those stories. I think we made it through both of those books on my lives while there was snow on the ground. And the cool thing for me about reading the stories again is I felt more connected to the stories because I knew them, and I felt like I understood more, and then I got to spend more time with some of the words. And so this year, more consistently, I'll say, we started reading stories in the house with the kids. I just took the same book we read, that I brought it out and I read Wisage Takis Scabs. And my wife has sacred stories too. They're sacred stories from this territory, and they tell their stories in the wintertime as well. So I think that's something that we need to start, doing again, not just necessarily from, I know I'm not an elder per se. That's not my role in my family or in the community. I'm a language learner. But also I feel like that's the only way my kids are going to grow up with these, is if I make sure that we have them in our house. Because there's a connection there. And it's not just significant to me as a language learner. It's not just significant to me from the cultural standpoint. It's got multiple facets to it, which I find interesting. I'm just going to pull open a document here. I'm going to stop rambling. We'll start reading. I'm just kind of thinking out loud. We got enough folks here. We can get started. Let me pull up. If everybody's happy with this story, there was a suggestion for the Sundance. Red Cloud Quay said, are we going to do the Sundance story? If this is the one you had in mind, Ancient Life of the Sundance, then we can do that one. If I've got the wrong one, let me know, and we'll switch. We'll just pick a couple stories and get going. I'll just get a document open so we can jump over. I have a scratch pad that I use just in case we want to dive into a couple words, dissect them a little bit. We've done that a little bit in the past, and if it's helpful, we'll do that some more. I'll just use the same document here. We'll just make a spot down here. We'll say December 28th. Saturday. Oh, if I can't spell here. Saturday stories. All right. Sure. All right, let's do this one. There's a few typos in here. We're just going to ignore them. So this story is Life, Ancient Life, The Sundance by Louis Musuman. Gaya sinuwag mistahig kittamagsuak. If you recognize this word, kittamagsu. We'll look up words as we go too. That's sort of my process. If I don't know a word, we can kind of just glance over at the English, which is I use as a last resort. That word, you might know this word as chamaks. You might hear it that way, chamaks. Kittamagsu, that's where that comes from. That T can be a C, kitsamagsu, or kittamagsu. That's where that comes from. To be poor, pitiful, miserable. Mistahe gi kittamagsuak, o skatsolte he hayatsik. Namagigweo gi pagatingosuak. So the people of long ago, they were pitiful, I guess we could say. O skatsote hayatsik namagigwe. Namagigweo gi pagatingosuak. They were left here with nothing. Oh, skuts. That's one of those words. It's like my brain just won't hang on to what that means. Oh, skuts. At first. When they were first placed here, they didn't have anything. They weren't left here with anything. Gimuse skatewak. They were naked. I only know that word because I've read this story lots. And I know that's what it says. But if I was out there 10 minutes from now and you asked me, how do you say naked? I'd be like, I know that word. I just can't think of it. Use skateo. We'll just pull it up. Just for fun, because we can. Muse skateo. That person is naked. Namagigoy ayuin sao tiayawak. They didn't have anything for clothes. When you see that, when you first learn that word as a learner, we learn that in the context of where you're from. Sometimes you'll hear it that way. Or so we learned that to mean from. But in some contexts, it can also mean with or for. Like if you ask somebody, Kiguayote, what for? Kiguayote. Or sometimes it means with. This is Plains Cree Y dialect. Y dialect nêhiyaw win. The dialect you would most likely hear in the central Treaty 6 Edmonton area, in some parts of Saskatchewan. But the dialect, there's more than one. Even within Y dialect, there are dialects. Can be different if you go north or south. Yeah. Namagigwe ayuinsa. They didn't have any clothes or nothing. Namagigwe, nothing. They had nothing for clothes. That's what that says. Ayawak. They had nothing for clothes. And we're live. Whoop! I got some noise coming through from either TikTok. Let me shut that off. Namagigwe muhkuman. They didn't even have a knife. Naisto skangyo muhkumanuak. So we talked about this the other day, this word. Naisto is like just or only, I guess. All they had for a knife was a bone. Naisto. Uskangyo muhkumanuak. So if we look at this word, we could see muhkuman in there. What's cool about this is that over here, muhkuman, we know that as a knife. Muhkuman. But if we look at this one here, muhkuman o muhkumanu. I don't even know. We'll see if we can look that up. Might come up. There it is. That one has a knife or knives. And how that works, we were talking about this before. How that works is if you take a noun, you put O on the front and you put U on the end, it turns it into a verb. Just to talk about the grammar a tiny bit. We won't spend a ton of time on that. But you can do that with almost anything. That's how we got to this. Kio muhkumanuak. Naistos kanyo muhkumanuak. All they had for a knife was a bone. Namagigoyo tiayawak isko teo. They didn't have any fire. They had nothing for fire. That's how I interpret that. That's what my brain interprets that. Namagigwe is like nothing. Ote, for. Ayawak, they had. Iskoteo, fire. They had nothing for fire. Atso sispagogi otinipaheowak psiskua. Atso sis. Like an arrow, I guess. Atos or atsosis, I think you can say. We learned a cool word when we were reading stories the other day. Muhkumanato sapisk, which is a special, like a sharp arrow with a stone arrowhead or a metal arrowhead. Atsosispagogi oats nipa heo. There's that O T again. Red Cloudway says in Ojibwe, muhkuman is knife, and when we put O in front of something, it makes it sacred. That's interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting. If it's just if it's a verb in nêhiyaw, when like nigamo, that one sings, but if you say o nigamo, that means a singer. But a song would be nigamun, nigamun. So if you said o nigamunu, that one has a song, I guess you could say. The languages are just, our indigenous languages are so complex. There's a context where we see oh again. In this context now it means more like with. As they only had an arrow. With only an arrow they killed animals. They killed with Atsosispogo. Oskana Egigamota Tsik Weepsisua. I don't know what this word means. Gigamotao. Let's go look it up. Gigamotao. Fasten. To fasten something on. Weepsisua. They fasten. Weepsisua. Let's have a look. Well, maybe we can find. Let's look it up first, and then we'll sneak over to Bloomfield's interpretation there. Nope, nothing there. Fastening bones to their arrows. Oh, I see. There's another word for arrow in there. That's right too. I think it's no. Let me see if I thought I found this the other day. I was like, what does that word mean? Weepsisua. There's another word for, I think it's just another way to say arrow, or maybe it's a specific type of arrow. I'll come back to it. Oskanai gigamotatsik. Weepsisuwag. They fasten bones to their arrows. Namagigwe gigitamagsuak. They had nothing. They were pitiful. Kitatoe iskoteo sitamaswak. Omsi totakik. So then suddenly they made fire for themselves. When I read this line, it says Omsi itotakik. It makes me feels like there's like a gesture here. They did it in this way. I see there's a footnote. So if we go down and have a look at the footnote, we'll see what that says. So there is. So Leonard Bloomfield says, unfortunately, I did not record the gesture. So yeah, that makes sense. There was a gesture there. Omsi se. Omse they itotakik. This is how they did it in this way. Egisteik pieskegotak iotnamak iskoteo. When it was hot, finally, they got fire. They took that fire. They took fire from there, I guess you could say. And the thing that's interesting about this is gisteo means it's hot. There's actually two things that are interesting about that. Gisteo, it is hot. The two things that are interesting about that particular phrase are, in this case, one, egisteik. It's in the obviate. Egisteik. It's this one here. Egisteik. We're not saying egisteik. Egisteik. We have to say it in that further position. Egisteik. Because the people, the giotnamak, the ones that took it, are the ones that are in focus. That happens with other people when we have two sets of people. But it also happens with things like weather or things like that. Morning Dove says, how do you know Cree? Well, I learned it. As much as I know, I'm still just a learner. I'm still just learning. So when it was hot, they took fire from there. Bisk Arsinia ipagamahwatsik ewasasko te payit egotegwa giotnamwak iskoteo aisinwak. Here he has down aisinwak, but I wouldn't say it that way. The way I hear it is aisinu. Aisinu. That's the way I hear that word. Angela Rose asks, are there still online classes? On January 6th, I think MESC is going to do another round of classes. Let me pull that up. We pulled that up last time. Let me just get my Facebook up here. MESC. I found this last time. It's this one here, Musqueam Education Schools Commission. Somebody said last week that on the 6th, they'll do another round. So I'm sure there's other ones, but this one I would recommend if you can get in. I'll just scroll really fast because I know it's way down here somewhere. They do these classes They have 4 different levels of classes. I've been to them a couple times. They're pretty fantastic because they have different, depending on where you're at in your language, you can get into a class sort of at your level. And they have more advanced. It's not just the intermediate, the beginner. They can get into some intermediate stuff, which is nice. Tisqua, I know I had to scroll down to find it last time. This one. So I know I'm pretty sure they'll run this again. Go back. Can I open that? New tab. Yeah. This one here. So just follow. If you're on Facebook, just go look for Musqueam Education Schools Commission, and they'll announce. And they do one in the fall, and they one in the fall, and then one in the new year. And somebody said January 6th they'll open up registration again. So go check that out. So Pisk eventually Asinia Ipagamahuatik, they banged a rock. They struck a rock until it, and when it made sparks, I guess, a wasasko te payit, that rock, that extra. This is again that obviate that there's 2 positions of people when we're telling stories. If we're not talking about me and we're not talking about you, we're talking about other people, then there's 2 positions that are possible. One is the third person, we say that person, them. But if there's another person, in the language, there's sort of like 2 positions, I'll say. And one is a little bit more in focus, or is like the more focused subject of what we're talking about. And then the other person is a little bit more distant, not specifically in like spatially, but they're a little bit more distant in relation to the focus or the context. They're supplemental. They're a part of the story, but they're not the focus of the story. And there's terms for these. The person in focus, there's an academic term, they call that the proximate. That just means closer. And then the other one, the one that's further away, is the obviate. And they can change positions in the story. In fact, they often do, because it tells us who's in focus when they're speaking. And so when we say this, when we see this, ewasasko te payit, that yit on the end, it's not ewasasko te payit. If it was that, we'd be talking about the third person, the person in focus, but it's not. It's wasasko te payit, where that's referring to that other obviate position. In this case, we know it's asini because it has a on the end. Pisk asinia, ipagamuhuatik, iwasasko te payit ego tegua kiotnam wakiskoteo, aisinuak. So they took a rock and they struck it, and when sparks came from there, when it sparked, from there they took fire. Those people, I guess you'd say. Egwaskigi otaskikuak. And then asaski is like mud, I guess. Otaskikuak. A skeek is like kettles. I guess they had kettles made from clay, maybe. Let's see what the pots and kettles were of earth. So that makes sense. I had to look that up last time too. Otaskikuak. Minagi watihkewak pahke gene asuatatik. I forget this word. Let's look it up. Watihkeo. Dig a hole. So they dug holes. I think this is that we just read this a little bit ago, so I think this is the one where you hide something. Asuatao. Asuatao. Let's look it up. To put it inside? Yeah, put it inside. So they would dig holes. Mina gi watike wak. They dug holes, and inside the hides they would put rocks. Ekasapskiswatik. This is my process. I'll just keep looking up words as I go. To heat them. They would put rocks in there to heat them in the hides. Eogoti wias egisakik. Eogoti is like, well, I learned that is like, that's the reason why, but I guess here it kind of means like in Eogoti. And so, well, let's see what Bloomfield says. In this way they cooked meat. Ego ki tatoi amisquayana gioto gi atayuinsuak. And eventually they had clothes made from beaver pelts, I guess. Ke tatoi peaki pawatam. Iwi kapai it muniawi inwa. Wapskwiasa. So then, at one point, one of them had a dream, I guess. We got by it that these white-skinned people would land on the shore, I guess, you would say. Atsimo tai speak the gapayit. So, taispi. Is that like, it sounds like something to do with when it would happen, maybe? Speak. What does it say here? He told when they would land. To me, it almost sounds like Daispi. Daispi. Tagapayit. Tapue anwe toao. When you ever see that H in there, we don't have this in the English language. Nêhiyaw, when in Plains Cree, when you see an H in SRO, or what they might say call standard Cree alphabet, you make a so I would overpronounce this. In the beginning, I would say tapwe anwe toao. Put that in there. Anwe toao. So I guess nobody believed him. I think that's what that word means. Or am I just misremembering? They rejected him. They denied this one that had the dream. Ati tapwe tag. Some of them believed him. Ego tamamik ispitsuak. Tsige gitsigami. Ispitsuak is ispitsu is like to make camp, I guess. Make camp thus. Move camp thither. What does thither mean? There? So I guess they moved Camp Maamik along the water, yeah? Maami. Downstream. That's one of those words I don't hear it enough to... I know it has to do with water, but I can never remember that exact downstream. Tige ki tigami. Alongside a great body of water, I guess you'd say. Egwawi puts gawi pegapa tikito. I wonder if that's ga, short a ga, or if it's supposed to be ga. I'm not a fluent speaker, so it makes more sense one way in my mind, but it might be an advanced phrasing that I don't fully understand yet. But I would understand this sentence, this phrase to be pretty soon they're gonna land, they will come ashore. Ito. Maskutsa po mitne kiepa tueo. I sinua. Iteo, he said to them. I sinua. Maskutsa po ahpo. Mitne kiepa. This is one of those ones where there's no verb in this sentence. Those are all. I learned the language. I study a lot of books and stuff, so I try not to get into too much the academic stuff, just enough to help me understand. But when I look at this, I'm like, those are all particles. I don't understand what this sentence means. Like I think I know what it means, but I don't know. I know what each of those words means on their own. But let's go over here and have a little. Surely, very soon, he says. So then it makes my brain wonder why would you say giepa and not, well, I guess he already said we puts, but mitani we puts would be like really soon to me. Maskutapo, surely that makes sense to me. Mitani giepa. Giepa. See, I always thought giepa was something you said to somebody when you wanted them to hurry up. Giepa. But maybe I'm using it wrong. Mitani giepa, if that means like very soon. I'll have to remember that now. Hey, Lindsay. Tahtogi se pan toa eta pumana nipi. So every morning, he'd go and look out on the water. To into aita po. That ai is like he's doing it again and again, I guess. Yeah, Guayaho, that's another one I hear. But I've heard people say a little further east, I hear Giepa. Maybe I'm just remembering it wrong. Giepa. I've got to look it up now. Hurry up. Giepa. Hurry up. Yeah, I don't hear it as much. But I've heard it like more so a little further east. Okay, Dookie, thanks for joining us. So tahtogi sepa. Every morning, each morning, tahto. Toaeta po. He would go and look again and again. He would go and look out on the water. Okay, tahtoe ga pit sapa tak timana. So this is a cool word. Sapa tak. He saw it suddenly or eventually. Kitahtoe, like suddenly he saw, I guess he saw something coming. Let's go have a look at this. Sapa tam will be what they call the lemma. He sees something coming. Pe is like coming. Isse, like the direction of it, I guess. And then apa tam is kind of like wapa tam, to see something, right? Pe sapa tam. He sees something coming, I guess. Timana, which I would understand as a canoe, I guess. But here they interpret as boats, I guess. Timana. Ote pe tagoteet. Sagatit. So they landed here. When I guess A being at the beginning of the sentence, and I could see the little hint over there. When they landed here. Sagatit, they shook hands. Sagatite. Sagatite is to, let's just look it up. Sagatite, nêhiyaw, I guess. Seize someone by the hand, shake hands. And then that ito should be a short O, but that there are typos. Ito with each other. Sagatite toak. They shook hands with each other. Atamskato atamisko toak. Amsto, that should be an A. No. Atamsko toak. That they greeted each other, but that's not the way I would understand that word. I guess that's the way it is. Atamskoil, atamskatoak is the way I would understand that. Atamskatoak, like this. I guess it means the same thing. To. Atamskotatoak. I guess it means the same thing. Wak is plural, tapwe. Them. Atamskotatoak. They greeted each other. Sige maig since guys wap matay sino wap squiasa. Sige ma. It's one of those words. I hear it and it just. And so it happened, I guess. Naturally, obviously. That's one of those words where I think I kind of know what those words mean, but if we just ignore this word, sige ma, if I just ignore that word for a minute and I just say, eg sinistam gas wap matay sinuap skuyasa. If I just say that, then my brain says, okay. So that was the first time they saw the white man. Aisino. But sige ma is one of those words where it's changing the meaning a little bit, and so I don't 100% know what they're saying. Indeed, I guess. I guess it means indeed it was the first time he saw the white man. Wapskuiasa. Kah kyogi wegi miek pietop matsru. Kah kyogi we everything they'd been given to live. Mohkoman paskasikan. Tapati tat kah kyogi we paskisiki win. So I guess I'd say they'd been given everything to live here. The Isinuak. What does it say? Oh, they gave him everything to live by. That makes sense. Gimiik. They gave him everything to live by, the knife and the guns and all kinds of munitions for his use. Baskisige was to shoot, I guess. Munitions. Okay, that makes sense. Hegsegotat utsi. And then from then on, or at that point, from then, I guess you could say, Kiskano hamua gatisipim pamehat baskisigan. So then I guess he taught him to use the pamihtat, pamihtao. To look after, attend to. That's a neat word. Ego tau tse aigua atamiwaya o akai sinuak. Ki tato e ego tau tse pisk atemwa Ayawewak. Eutapahatik. So let's see what he says. At a certain time after this, they began to have horses to pull loads. Kind of like utapa how? To drive or make them drag something. Interesting. Interesting word. Atimwa. We learned that word atim. Atim as dog, but it's used lots of time, especially in these older stories. It's more like horse. And what's really interesting about this word is if you look at, I'm going to go over to our friend Ben's site here. If we look up atim, if you look at the words that have to do with atim, they all have to do with facing away. To sit facing away, atimapo. Atimapmeo. See someone going away. Atimeo, catch up to someone, kind of like from behind, I guess. So atim, it kind of has to do with like away or sitting, like, right? And I heard a story one time that, so I think about horses are always like kind of leading, but dogs, when dogs are in camp, and this was a story that I heard was that dogs, if dogs are sitting in camp, they're always facing the bush or facing kind of away, I guess, watching for stuff. Cody says, what do you use for the dictionary? I use itoyona, which is if you just search for, I think you could probably look for like Plains Cree dictionary. Should come up right at the top. There's this old Cree dictionary online. The same people that it's in here, it's called Miwakotowin Community Education Authority. I think it's the same. I think they're correct me if I'm wrong. I think this was what MESC used to be called, or they're somehow related. But anyway, the same folks that used to make this dictionary are involved in this one. And the University of Alberta has incorporated Eric Wolvengray's dictionary as well as Alberta Elders Dictionary. There's Musqueam's dictionary. There's like probably 5 or more dictionaries in this. And so when you look up a word, we can actually look at that right now. Let's just look up a dim. Dim. Whoops. So when you see there are multiple entries, so the definition for a dim, we see dog in CW is Cree words by Eric Wolvengray. AECD, this is the Alberta Elders Dictionary, and then MD is the Musqueam's Dictionary from Musqueam's Cultural College, and then also this one. So there's multiple definitions because there are multiple dictionaries all in one, which is what also this old project also had that multiple dictionaries, but this is sort of the new version of that, I guess. Okay. O teipago nimetawa he sinuaki ayawatawak ki tato e misatamwa. Ayawata. I don't know what that word is. Ayawatao. Let's see what he says over here. O teipago nimito. That's another word I don't know. To the open country. That's an interesting word. So it says at a certain time, and strangely enough, it was only the people in the south who had horses. He dwells in the north from that time. This has never had. There's a bunch of stuff in there that I don't understand. Otepogo, only over here, Nimito, I guess, in the open country or in this particular area, some area, whatever that word means. Sinuakogi. These ones over here had horses. Ayawa, Ayawatawao. Them ones, I guess. Ways. I guess they had horses at one particular time. Namowi katsoti ayawe I sino. Natagam gaita. But the ones in the Natagam, is that the one that means north? In the bush country, in the north? The ones in the north had never seen them, I guess. Hey, Nikki. Is your dictionary voice activated? I don't think so. Well, unless I push this button. If I push this one button, I can talk to it, but it won't understand if I spin in nêhiyaw. If I speak the language. Hey, Nutcase, thanks for joining on. I'm glad. I am also trying to teach my kids. Read stories. We picked a bit of a hard story. I do type fast. That's the truth. I only know if I don't type. I'm not the fastest. My mom was a fast typer. My mom could type about 125 words a minute on a was an electric typewriter, but you still had to actually push the keys down. But man, she could type fast. I just happened to really enjoy the typing tutor in high school. I spent a lot of time doing that. I don't know why. I just enjoyed doing it. Kita toyo same ga egagi goi hayatsik mamostige win. Again, I'm reading this and I'm like, I know all those words. Kita toi piagna pe utoa simsa hina nipaha pagwit. So kita toi osame gagi goi hayatsik maustige win. So at one point, I'm not sure what Osam is doing in there. Because I guess he's saying because they had no way of, it says worship over here. I don't know what that means. Something to do with thirst. Kaya sa isa namawikats kiwe umas ki kutsil begin. Nipaha pagwit. Died of thirst, I guess. That's an interesting word. Kaya sa isa namawikats kiwe umas ki kutau begin. It's something about, seems that of old nothing ever grew from the earth, only grass ripened. Apo maskosia ki gisteo. This is interesting because gisteo is like, I understand that, but I think I want to understand that word is like cooked. Gisteo, it's cooked. But I guess in this context it can have another meaning. Gisteo. Yeah, it's like cooked food, cooked to completion, done cooking. But in this context of this story, it's saying that it was grown, I guess. Grown in the, maybe the implication is that grown by the sun. Interesting. So there was this one man, I guess, miwatasit, like he miwatse. Is that like to live really good? Miwatasu. Let's look that up. He was good-natured. Miwatasu. Ke tatoe ka wigmagut ogiskoa. So he was, and then, so I guess at some point he was told, ogiskoa, how ka to ito taitin ete gao keto pematsin. Again, my brain is going, I know all those words, but what they mean in that sentence, I'm not. I'm going to take you somewhere. Ito taitin. This is like ito teo, but it would be ito taheo, to take someone. Take someone thus, thither. I'm going to have to ask Eric, what does that mean? Thither. I don't understand that word. There, I guess it means there. Thither, it's like thus and thither. How ga ito tai tiniti kito pematsin. So Oskiskoa, the sky dwellers told him, I will take you where you will have life, I guess. He was told by the sky, Oskiskoa, the sky beings, I guess. Ogisago. Yeah, I guess that's what that'd be. I'll take you to where you can, to a place from which you will have life, I guess. Oh, back that you see that oh in there, that's like oh tsi. That's that oh tsi again. We go way back to the beginning. We saw that, we've seen that used in 4 different contexts. Well, the one that we learned, oh tsi, is like from. If I say Danese Danteo Tsigia, or Danteo Tsi, you might hear. Where are you from? Danteo Tsi. But in this context, another way you can use that, in that case, it'll mean from, but it can also mean for or with, depending on the context. Something like that. Namagi Gweotsi. They had nothing for which they were left here with nothing. Namagi Gweotsi. And then we saw another one down here. Atso sispago Gweotsi nipahewak pasiskwak. With an arrow, only with an arrow they killed animals. And so here's another one. This is that same, but sometimes you'll hear it this way. If I can find my spot again. No, we're past that. Getopimatsian. I'll take you somewhere from which, I guess you could say, from which you will get life, from which you can live. Over here it says, whence you will have your source of life, I guess, which is a interesting in interpretation. Oh, I have comments. I better you'll get them scat now, wow. I heard it, see guys, and I'm not even paying attention to any of my comments. I gotta scroll back here a little bit. Had to stop when I heard Cree. Tapwe. Oh, we're having a little reunion here. Tawao, pitagoy. Aya, Wendy, are you muniao? Aya, upsis, apito muniao. Itagoy. Apito. Utapem woman niya. Yeah, apo. Apito san. Do they have this? have a version of this in syllabics. No, but I'm working on it. So this is my site. I have this in. The reason I don't have this in syllabics yet is because there's still some. Oh, I don't want to use the word typos. I met Kevin Russell, who did some of the work on this, and he was like, typos? What do you mean typos? And I'm like, well, because it was done in an academic context, and I didn't mean to sound insulting or anything. I think the spelling is shifted slightly because there's still bits in there, but it could be easily put into syllabics. Is something that I'm working on. Projects. Okay. Star beings. Yeah, that makes sense. Yes. And thanks for helping out on that. I always appreciate when if somebody can if fluent speakers or somebody with more knowledge are willing to share that. That's I love that. Thank you. Kananaskumtin. Okay. E Muniao says, Dookie. This Sue says, what Cree is Plains Cree? Why dialect? Nêhiyaw win. Okay. Upsisayawak. We can go for a little bit yet. We'll go for a little bit, and then I had hoped. Well, there was another story I wanted to read. This one goes for a long time. Well, I don't think we're going to get to the end of this. That's okay. Ego tapui apitagi sagag, tota hik mayo, enipat. Ego te ipawata. So then I guess at midday, they were taken as soon as they slept. That's the way I read that. Mayo inipat. Ego te ipawata. And there they dreamt. That's the way I read that. Witamagosu. Nepagwe Simogamik. They were told about the implication here that Igose is the implication there is from the powers, the spirits, I guess you could say. Witamagosu. Nepagwe Simugamik. About the Sundance Lodge, I guess, or the Thirsting Dance Lodge is how I was taught to call that. Elgo tatuaski kita tota kik aisinuak ki miawak. This is not my work. This is Bloomfield. So if you go to my site, if you go to my site, kiano.net, and my background is in software, so I have a bunch of projects that I have the learner library out here where there's a bunch of stuff you can access. I have a different dialects. I'm going to start adding in different stuff I find on the internet for also other indigenous languages, mostly focused around Cree right now, to get different Cree dialects. But if you scroll down, you can learn about some of the language projects we're working on, and then Bloomfield. So Bloomfield was a linguist who did a bunch of work and recorded these stories on the Sweetgrass Reserve in the 1920s and published 2 volumes, Plains Cree Texts and the Sacred Stories of the Sweetgrass Cree. There was actually a 3rd volume too that was unpublished. Sue Ellen, you can just reach out to me on TikTok. My DMs are open and we can connect. Because I'll put this video, my lives I've been putting my lives on YouTube, so if I put my email on there, I'll just get emails. Ego tapoya api tagi sagagito tahik mayo enipa tego tapoatek. I just want to read this. Then truly he was taken to the place of that noonday sky, even as he slept. See, I didn't read it that way. So when I read itotahik mayoi na, okay, so I guess apita gisagag, to the, at or to the noonday. See, I read that as at noon, but again, you have to remember these stories were recorded 100 years ago. So some of the language I hear conversationally today, this is a little bit older language, I guess you could say. Sue Ellen says, turn your live to landscape so I can. That would not be easy to do at this moment. I can, I'm trying, because I'm streaming from my desktop. I'm not using my phone. I'm going through OBS and Restream. So I've set it up this way, hopefully so that the text is large enough to read. But if you want to follow along, you can you can open up Keanu.net, go down to Bloomfield and just click on Visit Bloomfield Online. And we're reading the first story on the left, Ancient Life, the Sundance. So you can go there and follow along if you like. So again, I didn't understand this. It can make these, it's interesting to study this, but my brain didn't read it that way. Witamagosu, Nipagwe Simuigamic, or Nipagwe Simogamic, about the Sundance Lodge, I guess, or the Thirst Dance Lodge. Hego tatoas ki gete tota ke kaisino ki miawak. And so every year, I guess, they were to do that, which they were given. That's how I read that. But let's go see what Bloomfield had. He was told by the higher powers of the Sundance Lodge, the people were given the annual performance of this rite, it says. Yeah, it's interesting. Hegwa spiges kano hamuao, tansi tatuta, ugisgoa, giskano hamag. Again, I read that and I'm like, I know all those words, but I'm not sure it says who we're talking about. I think I've lost the plot. So, and when, so when, or now when, then when. Let's go see what it says over here. Because I can't help but look at the grammar and say, okay, this is like, they taught how to do that. The higher power, the star beings taught them, I guess. What does it say over here? At the same time, he was taught how to perform it by the dwellers of the sky, he was taught. I did not read it that way. Ma scoots, no what's, the mia singagage, the pagatinama, I sino. Ego ntete nan. Ma scoots, like surely, I guess. Surely it would be well if they were always permitted, so we think. That's his interpretation, it says. Again, this is Bloomfield. Take everything in. This is 1925, so I try not to read this side if I don't have to, because it's got some real 1925 thinking in it. Tapwe. Handsome. Mia sine, tago sinian kia. Corin, how long you been learning Cree? Nanto ngotwa sikaski. Ngotwa sik pipun mina apsis, about 6.5 years. 6 years and a little bit, I guess. I guess you'd say. Yeah, 1925 turn of phrase. And there's some real, I don't know, like aside from all of the, and there's like, it's just take it with a grain of salt. If you're into the English side, it's very, there's, it's kind of Christianized a little bit, and it's very through the eyes of a white linguist in 1925. Just keep that in mind. But these stories were recorded. He learned a writing. He developed a writing system, and I actually have a PDF of his notes around here. I could show that to you. So he wrote this stuff down. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Documents. He wrote this stuff down, and so the stories are from fluent speakers. He developed enough of get this down to small enough so we can see it here. A writing system so he could write quickly. Oh, this is going to be really hard to see. Let me see if I can find something and it's all in pencil. Let me see if I can find one. And then, and obviously these notebooks are like 100 years old too. But this is his original notebooks. I have a scan of these. And you can see, and then he's got like little notes and corrections. And then he went back and typed them out. So the stories are recorded directly from fluent speakers. And the interpretations, the English side, he did have an informant that helped him with the translations of the words he didn't know. But it is still very much Bloomfield's interpretation. So it's got that, like Kel says, 1925 vibes. So just keep that in mind. Dance, Manato Carson, Kimaga. Handsome, you can find this if you go to my site, kiyanaw.net. Kiyanaw, just KIYANAW.net. Kiyanaw.net. If you go check that out, scroll down to Bloomfield Online, you can click on that. That'll bring you over here. The story we're reading is the first one here, Plains Cree Texts 01, Ancient Life, the Sundance. I got a couple projects going on with this. Hopefully we're going to get to them this year. I'd really like to. I got about 3 projects going on here. One of them is that there's actually a third book. There's the Plains Cree Texts, Sacred Stories of the Sweetgrass Cree. And then there was a third book called the Cree Syllabary. And it's got about another, I want to say 40 stories that he never published. But with any luck, we're going to do that soon. We have talked with elders from the Sweetgrass Reserve, and they said, yes, please, people need the stories, so let's get them out there. So with any luck, we'll get to that this year. Mananto, pitagwe, miasin kakiwe, tagosini. I'm starting to struggle with this story a little bit. We're getting close to the end, but we're definitely getting to the spot where I got to study this a bit more because the language is a little bit beyond or it's definitely challenging me. It's challenging me. We can do a little bit more. So, Maskuts na what's the meas in gagigi. The pagatinama ay sinu ego titinan. So it says over here, surely it would all be well if it were always permitted. Crops would grow well. And then he says, tahke. I don't know that word. Tahke. Always, I guess. Tahke. Constantly, repeatedly. That's a cool word. Tahke. Tahke gigwe get the meal begin. Things would always grow well, I guess. I think that's what it said. Crops would always grow well. Moi matsikigwe nepagwe semogamik. It's not a bad thing, the Sundance, he says. Wiwa ka kyogigwe matsugigwe nêhiyaw matsumantua atoskoewak. I itoewak ayameheo yinwak. Those ones, those priests, I guess, they say everything that the nêhiyaw does is, what would you say? Matsumantua atoskewak. They work for the evil spirit, it says here. Say the missionaries. On the contrary, moinia na nêhiyaw taskiko tse kapagit now. Not us nêhiyaw on this earth. I wonder if that's supposed to be ki pagit now. It's like, I think I know what he's saying. I think I know what he's saying. But what he's saying here is, on the contrary, we're not put here on earth with these things. The Cree has never known and does not know an evil spirit or a son of God, I guess. Matsumantua mina manto kosan moyo tsigiskimel. That's that one there. They don't moyotse, they don't know anything of that. Matsumantu or manto gisa ogosa. Mina matsumantu ka siga sot moy nêhiyaw giskimel. And that matsumantu, the one that's called matsumantu, the nêhiyaw doesn't know anything about that one. Ata tagi tepoi tak ne tapoi tak. Sorry, I could tell I'm getting tired. I've been doing lives all day. Ata kitagi tapoi tak nêhiyaw. No what's mantua? You get the magim gut. Higawi got siuten agana nepayegut. Ata, I understand it is like although. Ata. Tanse Sunny, I love that you learned our language. Most of us haven't. I'm just here to inspire. You know, this was my this was my grandma's first language, so I didn't learn it either. I started when I was 40, so I'm here to try to inspire you, motivate you if you're thinking about learning your language. I'm only 6 years into this, and it's a lifelong thing. Language learning it's not an event. So if we want to reclaim our languages, we must. We've got to take them and bring them back into our lives. And asanamoagik. Pogoga asanamoagik. Nitoas kitoasimnoak. Kitoasims. My brain's getting tired. We have to pass it on to our kids, I guess I'll say. Getting tired. I can't conjugate on the fly. It's been a long day. Okay, let's do a little bit more. Yeah, Nova says for although I say kiamata. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, kiamata. Sue asks, do you have audio for what you're reading? I don't, but that's one of the projects I have going on. Working with a fluent speaker to try and get some audio for this, because I think that would be, like, it'll be awesome. I have a demo of that, of a fluent speaker reading this, and it's so good. And you might even know the fluent speaker. But it's one of those things where it to get it done, like it's a project. We just have to work on it. Yeah, I'll have to dig it up. It's on a laptop somewhere. I've honestly worked on so many projects. It's really good though. It sent shivers down my spine. Because this fluent speaker is just got the voice too, which is great. This is Plains Cree, wide dialect. Nêhiyaw win. Nêhiyaw win. Okay, let's see if we can get through this bit here. Namawigats nêhiyaw nipahikyo in the wind. Oh no, hold on. We're before that. Ata kitagi tap tapwe ta nêhiyaw na what's mantua igitama game gut. Igawigats yotin wa ka nipaye gut. So I read this as that the wind never killed them. And the context, I guess, is what's is like by comparison. Kitama game got the mantu, I guess the creator, you would say, maybe, took pity on them. Kitama game got. Let's see what it says over here. But rather, well may be Cree. Well may the Cree believe that the spirit looks with kindlier pity on him, since he is never killed by winds. Never is a Cree killed by wind, which is an interesting reference. It just, whenever I hear a phrase like that, it just makes me think. There's got to be a deeper meaning to that. It's such an interesting phrase. That says the same thing. The thunder beings, the thunderbirds never killed the nêhiyaw. Shelbs asks, what inspired you to start learning? So I never grew up with any language or stuff. Nêhiyaw was my grandma's first language, so I didn't know that till recently. I always thought it was southern Saskatchewan. I just assumed it was Michif. And I grew up knowing my parents talked about Métis. My mom was Métis. We would be involved in cultural stuff, which was mostly just jigging and fiddling and stuff like that, you know. I never grew up in like community, Métis community or any of that kind of stuff. And on my dad's side of the family especially my dad's dad was very, what's the word? Openly critical of indigenous ways. I guess you could call that laterally violent, maybe. Well, racist, whatever you want to call it. So, but as I got older and involved in my friendship center, I was involved in my local. I was, part in the youth groups. I worked at the friendship center. And then I was started to be around like more ceremony. And I grew up in Treaty 6 territory and grew up hearing the language quite a bit, especially around ceremony and stuff like that. And we got quite, way more involved in ceremony as an adult. We try and live, good life. And so I was thinking about it pretty seriously. And then, I circumstances aligned that when I was 40, that it was the right time to pick up the language. My wife is also a language learner. She's learning her language. Her mom's family's from Upper Nicola in the central BC, what is now unceded territory of the Okanagan people. And so we moved out here. We're in West Kelowna right now. When I was in Edmonton, Treaty 6, I was just going to everything I could possibly get my hands on to learn language. Every class, every meeting, every conversational group. And so, and then, but we moved out here because my wife's in her 4th year. She's actually going to graduate with honors for a degree in her language this year. So we're super proud of her. And so I have a background in software and I do work in apps and different things. And I'm always thinking about and have the privilege and the benefit of being able to discuss these challenges with my wife all the time. Challenges that face language learners. And so I decided after I spent a week of almost a few days at Kevin Lewis's camp after a beautiful trip This is our canoe trip, by the way, right here. A few of us. You can't see that picture very well. But one of our mentors and friends is paddling that canoe in the middle by himself. All 40 kilometers. Anyway, we went on this amazing trip with one of our mentors. It was semi-immersion. It was great. And spent a bunch of time on the water. And on the way back, we stopped to see Kevin Lewis and realized that stories, two things. Stories were really important to language revitalization. And then the other one was short modular content. And so that's when I started my TikTok. Just come on here and inspire folks to carry on with their language journey, because it's easy to get distracted or busy, right? Yeah, you're welcome. The Discord's been quiet. Everybody's busy. It's just that's the way it is sometimes. Sue Ellen. Need to make audiobooks. Audiobooks would be cool. If I felt a little more confident in my that could be a possibility. But I'd rather have a fluent speaker work on that. Let's see if we can get a little further down the story. Shelbs, I hope that answered your question. I think, let's see. Namawikats nêhiyaw nipa kiskoteo. Fire never killed the nêhiyaw. Ego tautsi ni tetenan. No, it's nêhiyaw. I get the mag na goswit. By comparison, or conversely, the nêhiyaw was pitied by the higher powers, I guess you'd say. Maskuts. Egisua hat mantua. Maskuts egisua hat. I want to say, it says, that is why we think the Cree is favored by the higher powers. Perhaps it is because he has angered the spirit by putting a stop to the Sundance Lodge. Oh, I see where he's going with this. Maskutse gisua hat mantua. Nipagwe simoga mik. Egepitnak eogo ti mamistehe go gao. Bigona kik muniao utenawa nitetenan. I see where he's going with this. Mina eskuteo tahto gisago gao pikonak waskahigana. And the fires. Well, let's just go read his interpretation, he says. Perhaps it is because he has angered the spirit by putting a stop to the Sundance Lodge, that in such numbers they break up the Canadian towns, and that every day fire destroys their houses. Tahtogi saga miswe nigskete nan isaskite gewaska higana. Mayo te na eto te ako. Yeah, this is getting advanced. Again, my brain thinks it knows what that means. Every day, miswe, all around, we think that a saskite, saskiteo. What does that mean? Saskiteo. It catches on fire. Tato gisigaw. So every day, all over, we think, or we know, nan. We know that they catch fire, these houses. Mayo ote na. As soon as we go to town, I guess, ito te ako. Mina nipete nan tatoni pin. And we hear that every summer. Epiguasta kepugo. Ita utena wa. Piguastam. What's that mean? Piguastam. Whoops. Nope. Piguastam. Sounds like broken. What does he say over here? Every day we learn everywhere houses have caught fire every time we go to town. And every summer we hear in many places towns have been destroyed by windstorms. Bigwa stam. Interesting. Moimatskiwe ga gi migoya manto. It's not a bad thing that was given to us by the Creator, he says. Mam skutskiwana. Mam maus malmostigiwana. Brain's getting tired. Malmostigiwana. Malmostigiwana, I guess you'd say that's like ceremonial things, yeah? What does he call it over here? Ways of worship. Again, that's got that 1920s vibe, ways of worship. Malmostigiwana. I interpret that as like, I guess, ceremonial things, I guess. Nice toga kitaise ntotami. There's a nitota miugigui. Nitotam. Not nitotam is to listen. Nitotam, to ask for something. The thing that's interesting about this word is that mi on the end puts it in a. Even though we study the grammar, if you will, we know that nitotam means the third person. But when you put that mi on the end, it makes it sort of so we're not talking about anybody in general, or we're talking about everybody. It's just something. It becomes. This is the wrong word, but passive voice, if you want to sort of think of it that way. Nice to get this and totami. Myogigui. So what did he say about that? Be prayed for. Only that good things be prayed for. Be requested, I guess. We're not talking about anybody specifically. Hegse nigi is pagatin ganan. Manto taski ka nêhiyaw ya. Ka nêhiyaw ya. Us who are Cree. So I guess egg sigin nigi is pagatin ganan. And so in this way, or in that way, I guess, that is how egse. We were set here by the Creator. We were left here by the Creator on this earth, us who are Cree. That's how I understand that. Thus did the Spirit set us down here on earth, us who are Cree. So we're close. Or maybe his interpretation is close to ours. Guess you could look at it either way. Atit mam skats masto. It itago ke. Itagon is when something exists. Atit mam skats, so musto. What's that mean? Musto. I don't know that word. Newly. Recently, lately. So some things, mom scots are mom scots is like when something's wondrous, right? So it's like there's some wondrous things. Nimi toana ega kepitna wapskuias na toke se meistingik. Ace me stingik. Sounds like change something. What's this say over here? Strange that some dances which arose much later are not stopped by the white man. Boy, I didn't get most of that. Atit mamskats. I guess that makes sense. It's a wonder that some recent nimitona dances that are here, I guess. Ega gepitna Gebitna. Is that to stop something? Gebitnam. Stop it. Interesting. Hey, John, Dance from Treaty 5, Manitoba. Mia sine tago sinian. Tapwe. Egai kipit nak wap skuyas. Nanato kesi me meistinge. This word I should look. Meistinge. Meistingeu. Exhaust, spend, use it up. Nanatok. Dances in which various things are used up. Well, the sun dance. Dances in which various things are used up. Okay. Maga and pagwe simu na magigwe. Meistinganwa. But nothing is wasted in the sun dance, he's saying. Nêhiyaw ego tatwaski ki miawak. Nisogisagaw ega kita mitsotsik. Kita ntota kik ka kyogigwe kita miopo beginiek. So I guess he's saying there in the, he's talking about the lodge, there in the Sundance every day. He's given, for 2 days, he's given everything, I guess. Ki miawak. Nisogisagaw ega mitsotsik. They don't eat. And they request, or they pray, I guess. Tota they I guess tota kik ka kyugiwe get the meal. I guess they request all of the things they need to for their kids to be raised well, I guess. Maybe you'd say get the nitota kik ka kimuaniek. They request rain, I guess you'd say. Exiga sa pagitnik. Utaski get the maga sinu. So it was given to the Cree every year for 2 days to go without eating, to pray that all things might grow well. Oh, I see. So just like he's talking about the growth again. That was from the beginning of the story. So my misinterpretation there. It was thus that the poor Indian, he says, was set here down on earth. Poor is the wrong. We say get the mag. Like, poor is kind of, I guess it's one way you could see that. It just, when you say get the maksu, it's like there's, I guess to me it seems like there's a degree of humility in there. It's not just like poor, pitiful, I guess. Well, I guess so sometimes it could be. Just the way I understand it. Gamiete nia mina wayo geta ito te magak pigskoewin. Ega wapi, and he's saying, I would like for my words, I guess, to go far. Ega wapi, and I can't see, because I guess I don't see. Egsa spine ocean moin wapin. Since I've been here, I guess. Is that what that says? Egsa spine ocean. That to me sounds like since I arrived here, since the day I was born, it almost implies. I haven't had sight. Namawikatsa skinuapate, and I've never seen the earth. Egse skopogo ite totean. Nitito tan namawikats nawanehon. Egse skopogo. Skopogos. Sko is like sometimes, poko is like just, but when you put them together, I don't quite know what that means. From time to time, skopogo. That's interesting. From time to time, when I go somewhere, nitito tan. I mean to go anywhere. I go there. I never get lost. So that's the end of that story. Boy, that was a lot of work. That was a good one. I had another story prepared for today, and somebody was like, somebody asked, "Hey, are we going to read the Sundance story?" So that's kind of how we ended up there. That was fun. Oh, my brain's tired now. A lot of work. I meant to get to some transcribing tonight, but we're not going to do it because I'm going to have to. I've used my allotted time for. We're coming up on the end of the live, so I appreciate everybody that come in to join us tonight. We got through that story anyway. I'm going to start doing lives on Saturdays at the same time. 6 p.m. Pacific is my plan. Miupaige, if everything goes well. I'd like to. I'll be back again next Saturday. I used to do this 2 nights a week, and it was a bit much. I like to go for about 2 hours, and so again, we're actually going to cut it short, maybe a few minutes tonight. But we'll go next Saturday about 6 o'clock. And yeah, we'll leave it open for a few questions or any discussion at the end of the evening. Not too late, so we can still have a little bit. I still have to have supper. What's that word I learned the other day? Kagwatage. It's like to be kagwatage no te mitsun or something like that. Anyway, to be really hungry. Yeah, so Thunderwing, I'll be back on Saturday. Be about the same time. I'm from, I grew up in and around Rocky Mountain House, which is in Treaty 6, West Central Alberta. Boom says, second time joining in. Thanks for doing this. Yep, right on. Absolutely. If you click on there's like the follow button, you'll get the notice when I go live. It'll be the same time next week. That'll be my goal for 25 is I overdid it a little bit earlier this year. I had to take a break. But we'll read some stories. We'll read sacred stories while there's still snow on the ground. So we'll go for a month or two. We got a few different books. We'll come back to some of the books we read on the solstice. We'll go back through those stories. And then my plan for tonight, even though we picked a really hard story to get through, and we read through the whole thing. Took us 2 hours. Takes my slow brain some time to figure out what's going on. But the plan will be we'll do some stories, and then we'll do some transcribing. We didn't get to it tonight, but next week we'll break open a video, and we'll try and spend at least a half an hour at the end just doing a little bit of transcription. We'll just spend some time listening, spend a little bit of time listening to the language, and then trying to figure out what's being said. Kapot says, do you do syllabics? I can. Yeah, I've learned this. I learned from Ruben Quinn. I don't use them actively as much as I should. Whenever I want to brush up on syllabics, I'll take something like this and I'll write it out in syllabics. And just to sort of get back to it, because I got to get my brain back into with the directions. Yeah. My username is Otapemsu. That's Otapemsuak. That's what we call ourselves, Métis people. Otapemsuak or Apitogosanak. Loosely interpreted, Otapemsuak is the ones that own themselves, I guess. Decrypting. No, we're not decrypting anything. We're just reading nêhiyaw. Plain screen nêhiyaw. Yeah. Why dialect? These are stories from the 20s that were recorded by a linguist and published. So we just read through one of these are stories from the Sweetgrass Reserve that were recorded in 1925. And yeah, I do know syllabics. Yeah. Yeah, I learned the star chart Ruben the way Ruben Quinn teaches it. I've taken his class several times. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Graybeard says Blackfoot. The languages are of the same language family, I guess. I don't know much about the linguistics. I try to read some of that stuff, but like they're both from like the Algonquin family, I guess. I don't know any more than that. Can you convert English? No, and I don't even try. I would always ask a fluent speaker to do translations. Some things just don't translate well, and part of that is like idioms, like things that we say, like "I'm gonna run out for milk." Like it just doesn't make sense in the language because you don't really say that. Nêhiyaw one can be very poetic or very figurative, I guess, but in some cases it's also very like a very specific and sometimes very literal, depending on the context, I guess. But like idioms, and when we ask for translations, lots of times we're asking about like idioms and stuff that just don't translate. So it's best to just sometimes you'll ask a fluent speaker like, "How do I say this?" And the answer you'll get back is like, "We wouldn't say that, or we don't say it that way," right? Because it's there's a worldview shift there. It's a different way of seeing things. The relationship with things, the relationship with the land, relationship with each other, and the language is just it's different, and it's baked into the way that you speak. I guess I'll say. Boom says that's where I'm from, Sweetgrass. Beautiful country, beautiful land out that way. We had the chance to go 2 years ago. We were at Sundance out there. It was beautiful, amazing. Peaches asks, how long you been learning Cree? About 6 years. Nantoya, ngutoa sik pepun minapsis. Gray bird. I'm gonna go see grandma. In English, something like I'm gonna go see my mom's mom in Tsutna. Yeah. Nuinto Nuinto Gilgoao no kum. I guess more directly translated in but yeah, no kum. Well, we don't distinguish between mom's mom and dad's mom would be the same word for us. But in my wife's language, they're different. All of those, like in nêhiyaw, some when we get to aunts and uncles and cousins and that stuff, like that gets very specific. But like nokum, nimosum, those are the same on both sides. Boom says, my dad speaks fluent, always says the same thing with explanations. Yeah, which is interesting because lots of words sometimes like who is it, Carl Quinn or somebody, there was a video somewhere I saw where it's like they said that word wah kotoin, and then they talked about it for like 10 minutes, and then they're like, that's what that means, wah kotoin. It takes this long to explain it, but in nêhiyaw you just say wah kotoin, that's what it means. It's like there's just so much in one word sometimes. Sue says, my dad speaks to Old Cree as a radio show. Has or had? Is that something we could listen to? Is it online somewhere? That'd be fantastic. Graybird says, yeah, uncles and aunties got like 3 or 4 words for auntie or uncle. And there's all these familial terms. Like if it's and some of them be like if my dad's sister or my mom's brother, those are different. Or if I have like my dad's brother's kids are my brother and sister, but my mom's brother's kids are my cousins. And there's different words for all of those. It's super interesting. Sue Ellen, that'd be cool. Definitely reach out. The more stuff, the better. Whenever I find resources that people can have access to, I'll put them in my learner library here. So if you can go here, if you're learning the language, I'm hoping to put more languages in here as I find stuff, because I put stuff in here because I get tired of searching for it. So, but if you're learning and you want stuff, and if there's not something in here that you think should be, you can click right here to submit it to me. You just send it off, and I'll include it in there. But if you're just starting out, you can just click on listen, and then it'll narrow it down to like podcasts, songs, different stuff just that you can listen to. If you want to watch, then there's a few YouTube channels, APTN Lumi, which has some language. So you can kind of go here and find stuff. And I'm just building this out more and more as just a bit of a resource where you can just go and just work through it. Because right now it's scattered all over YouTube and Facebook and everywhere else, and stuff disappears. Stuff on here too that like hard to find stuff like Indian names for Alberta communities, a PDF. So I gotta copy that on here just so it's there, because it was published by Glenbow Museum in '87. It might be interest to somebody, but you can just, as I find hard to find stuff, I just put it here. So if you have stuff, you want to send me stuff, I'll put it there. Especially like anything we could listen to, that's fantastic. Robert says, we are related to James Bay. Is it James Bay? You mean James to people out there? We were told from elders. Yeah. James Bay. Yep. Graybeard. Very intricate and intriguing learning my native language. It makes me happy seeing others too. Da boy. Our languages are so sophisticated. They're so elaborate and beautiful and sophisticated. It's mind-boggling how elaborate nêhiyaw can be sometimes. Sue Ellen says, he's teaching me in my translator. I'm looking for a scholar. I'll let her know, like your wife with help. My wife is, I don't know what she's procrastinating her master's application right now because she needs to come up with academic stuff. I don't know what she keeps, as soon as she entered university, she started talking like an academic, and I don't understand what she's doing anymore. With the thesis and all of this. Like, I get it. It seems like classes and things, but she needs to come up with things to do. And she's kind of putting it off. Sue Ellen says, my dad will be teaching Plains Cree on my son's YouTube channel. Just send me a direct message and we can connect you. That'd be cool. Yeah. All right, we're coming up on 8 o'clock. We're just going to leave it a few more minutes here. I'm Pacific time. If you're just logging on, I'm going to be back on next Saturday. We'll fire up again. Same time, 6 o'clock Pacific, 7 o'clock Alberta, 8 o'clock Saskatchewan, whatever random time it is in Whitehorse. And kakyo kitam skat nêhiyaw. Nanaskamunta pui kakyo gapi gyogoyek. I'm grateful for everyone that came to visit and hang out. Nanaskum tawitapim tagok anutska tipskag. I'm grateful to sit with you all tonight and work through some of these stories together and learn a little bit and visit. So I will just give you 60 more seconds if there's any last minute well-wishings. We'll start the countdown timer. Feel free to reach out to me on TikTok here if you want to connect. And definitely check out my site, kiano.net. And please do send me your resources. If I've missed something, I'll include them here. With that, I'm going to shut it down tonight, and we'll see you all again on Saturday. Hope you have a great week. Take care. Muestas.